Are we good? Are we good? Okay. Welcome back to my channel, guys. Today we're going to talk about a very important topic to musicians, but especially important to string players. So today I bring you 5 tips to help you play in tune. So let me start off by saying that nobody plays in tune 100% of the time. Like, nobody. Nobody. One of my teachers told me that there has been research done, I believe, on William Primrose's recordings, because people have always said that he plays perfectly in tune, and what they found is that he actually didn't play perfectly in tune, but what he did was adjust the pitch so quickly that nobody could hear that he was changing it. So, with that said, you never want to just sit on a note when it's out of tune. If you realize that you're not matching the people around you or something's off, maybe make a little bit of an adjustment, because it might just be you that's out of tune. So there's a lot of different reasons that you could be playing out of tune. I mean, it could just be that you're not shifting correctly, or maybe your fingers hitting the string at a weird angle, or it could just be that you're not listening closely enough. So that's usually what it is for most beginners. You haven't had enough ear training to really know for sure whether a pitch is in tune or not. So I'm gonna be throwing in some helpful tips along the way to help you know whether or not you're actually playing in tune. And I don't want this video to just be for beginners. I really want this to be for all levels, so even if you're advanced, maybe I'll throw in a tip that you haven't heard before that might help you play more in tune. And if you are a beginner, try to come back to this video in the future, watch it again, because there are some things that are going to be more difficult for you to do as a straight up beginner. But as an intermediate or advanced player, you'll totally be able to do. So I'm going to mix it up a little bit. So I'm going to start off with tip number 1, which is get a tuner. It's probably the most obvious tip of the 5 that I've gathered for you. So I just use a tuner on my phone, and I use an app called Tuner Lite, that's L-I-T-E, and I think it works just fine. I haven't had any issues with it. It was free. It beats having to carry around a metronome and a tuner with me all the time. So here's what it looks like. So you have this needle. Okay, well first you press this button and it brings up a needle that shows you pitches. When the needle is straight in the middle, going up and down, this green light lights up and you know that you're playing perfectly in tune. So that's something that I think a lot of beginners hate using to practice because it's time consuming and you just have to practice slow. And everybody hates that, but that's actually the best form of practice. Anyways, that's for a different video. So use a tuner to help you. If you're not right in the middle, if you are looking at your tuner and the needle is to the left of center, then you're flat. And if it's to the right of center, then you're sharp. So basically, you get pickier and pickier about where that center of the pitch is the more you play, the more you listen to yourself. If you hear a note that's out of tune, don't just keep going. You want to make sure that you know exactly how that pitch is supposed to sound. Again, it just takes playing for a while to really get good at this kind of thing, and listening to yourself really closely, not just whatever it happens to do. You know, you have to be picky, and you start kind of gaining muscle memory too about where your fingers are when they're totally in tune. Like on violin and viola, for example, especially on violin, to play a half step between your 2 and your 3, your fingers shouldn't see the light of day, you know? So I know the distance between my 1 and my 2, and I know where my 3 goes because it's like smushed up against my 2. So that kind of helps me know for sure if I'm playing in tune. I also spend a lot of time using a tuner. So I tune my instrument every day with a tuner. This is all a moot point. If your instrument is in tune, I should throw that out there. So another use for your tuner is to use it as a drone. So if I press this other button, I get a pitch. So I can compare what I'm playing to that pitch, okay? So I'll just keep it really simple. If you want to make sure that your C is in tune, well, use a drone. You can also kind of test any pitch against it. So if you're in the key of C, you might want to keep your drone on so that you can start hearing what all of the pitches sound like in tune in relation to that C. So when a note is out of tune, you're gonna hear these sound waves hitting the notes against each other when you're playing them together. So for example, when a note's out of tune, you'll hear these sound waves that sound like bumps, kind of. If you can hear it, but I can hear it right under my ear, and I'm not just gonna sit on notes out of tune for you guys. And when it's totally in tune, it's a really smooth sound. So you start to listen for those little differences for when a note is totally in tune. And I'm talking about when you're testing two notes against each other, like an open G and a third finger G. Okay, so there's a lot that you can do with a tuner, but you have to sit down and try to use it. So you can kind of figure out the best method for you to help you play in tune. So nobody wants to sit down and use a tuner 100% of the time that they're playing, so I have some other things that might help you too. So tip number 2 is what my teacher calls treasure hunting. Meaning, you don't just sit on a note that's out of tune, you have to wiggle your finger around a little bit. For most people, it's not like crazy out of tune. I mean, sometimes it is, who am I kidding? For a lot of people, it's incrementally out of tune, so you might just need to roll your finger around a little bit to really get at the dead center of the pitch. You have to look at it as an experiment. Move your fingers around, okay? That's how you can figure out whether or not you might hit a note that sounds better than the one you're currently on. So you can use double stops to do that too. So this might be more for intermediate or advanced people. I can test notes against my open strings. And sometimes I have to play a note out of tune to get it in tune. That's also a really helpful thing to remember. If you're not 100% confident that something's in tune or not, take it way out of tune so that you can bring it back way in tune. I think it's helpful to do that sometimes. So I'm just moving right along because I don't want this to be the longest video in the world. Let's talk about my tip number 3, which is playing notes out of order. I actually talked about this in my other practice tips video, but I wanted to touch on it more with you guys in this one because I've been doing this more as an advanced player than I ever did before, and this is something we all should be doing. So let's say I have a passage that I'm having a hard time playing in tune. I don't know, for this sake, let's just say I'm doing a little scale. Okay? And I'm having a really hard time hearing those notes. So I'll do them out of order.
3 hours later.
Something like that. And you can do that with any passage you're having a hard time hearing. You can do it at all parts of your instrument, and I'm really just talking about when you have a passage of notes that you're having a hard time hearing in tune. Play them out of order. I think hearing pitches coming from different notes kind of gives you a different perspective on what it really sounds like to be in tune coming from other perspectives. Tip number 4 for playing in tune is to check the angles of your fingers on a string. Let me show you on my viola what I'm talking about. First of all, you never want your fingers to collapse when you're playing a string instrument. So this goes for bass, cello, violin, viola. You never want to do this. You always want your fingers to be like nice, little, strong, curved. I think of them almost like little hammers. So when my fingers are going down the right way, my wrist isn't being weird, my elbow is directly under the instrument, my fingers aren't hitting the strings actually in the dead center. So I'm not putting my finger down like this. They're actually being put down at a bit of an angle. So let me see if I can show you. So I'm actually feeling the string hitting the back side of my nail. I'm trying to show you the angle. I don't know if you can see that, I think you can. But see how it's not just like up and down at the center of my finger? It's actually hitting my fingers at an interesting angle. And then I also think about playing more on like the back side of my finger, not just right in the center. So you might want to do some experimenting with how your fingers are actually falling on the string. So make sure your fingers are really strong, that they're curved 100% of the time when you're putting them down. You never want to get flat fingered. Another thing you could do is just look in a mirror to make sure your wrist isn't doing anything super funky and that your elbow isn't either. You really want a nice heavy arm beneath the center of your instrument so that you can kind of feel a little bit like you're hanging off of it. Any kind of tension that you have is gonna make it harder to play in tune as well. So that could also be another factor. All right, so my last tip, tip number 5, is to record yourself. It's really hard to tell sometimes when the instrument's right under your shoulder from a first person perspective what in tune actually is. I've had it happen to me a lot, which is partially why I'm recording myself so freaking much now. I'll watch videos back and be like, oh, like I didn't even realize that part was out of tune. you know? And so being able to come at it from a third person perspective is really, really helpful. So you don't have to spend a ton of time recording yourself, but I have been spending like an hour a day at least sitting down in front of the camera and watching back. And a lot of times I am not as in tune as I thought I was. So watching a recording really allows you to be your own teacher. You can kind of pick apart your own playing, which you want to do, so that you can continue to get better and grow as a musician. You don't want to just be safe 100% of the time because you're never going to get better. So anyways, you want to watch your footage back, really listen hard, and sometimes I have to listen to it a few times in a row before I'll go, oh, was that really in tune? No, you know, so you might want to watch it back a couple times and then make your decision about it. I've actually had it happen too, where I've posted something to Instagram and I've watched it back, and it's like the 5th time that I've watched it back or something, I go, oh my God, like that's so pitchy. So yeah, I don't always play in tune. Shocking, I know. Watching back my footage has actually been one of the most helpful things, and I wish I hadn't waited so long to really start implementing that into my daily routine of playing. So maybe you can do that like at the end. I don't know, that's what I've been doing anyways. I'll have a good, nice long practice session, feel really warm and confident about what I'm doing, and then I'll record myself, and then I watch it back. I'll make mental notes for me to either sit down right then and work on, or for the next day. It's really up to you. But so you might want to get a journal or something so that you can really be specific about this stuff and write it down. So I know I covered a lot of things in this video, and it's not very long. Like, I could have gone into way more depth about all of these subjects, so I apologize if I didn't go into enough depth about it. But if you want me to do a more specific video on any of these tips, I think I could do a full video about just about all of them. So don't be hesitant to leave me a comment and let me know what you want to see, or anything that you might just need help with. So I hope that I gave you some good tips for how to play more in tune on your string instrument. Something we all have to battle with, and sadly it never ends. But you do get better at it, and it gets easier and easier to play more and more in tune all the time. So you just gotta keep at it. Listen really hard to yourself and be really picky, and be really honest with yourself too. Don't just keep going if you hear a note that's a little out of tune, because that's the stuff that you need to really pick up on to fix, so that you just become a more well-rounded player. So you know the drill. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. It really helps support my channel. And if you haven't already, please subscribe. And as Whitney Simmons says, until next time, I'll see you next time.